Mercedes did not panic because Russell was unbeatable in Austria. Mercedes panicked because the upgrade may have made him unbeatable in a way the FIA could not ignore. Too calm under braking. Too clean on traction. Too gentle on the tires. Too stable through the stint. Too repeatable when Red Bull expected the Mercedes to fade. And in Formula 1, when a car suddenly gains everywhere without paying the usual price, the paddock asks one terrifying question. Was this legal innovation, or did Mercedes push the upgrade too far? Because one fast lap can be luck. One perfect setup can be explained. But when the data makes a car look almost impossible to break, that is not just speed. That is a warning. And if the FIA truly found an illegal upgrade, Mercedes could be facing a scandal that damages the win, the car, and the trust around Russell's performance. But if the upgrade survives the checks, the truth may be even worse for Red Bull. Because then Russell was not unbeatable by accident. He was unbeatable because Mercedes may have found a legal weapon no one else knows how to stop. Subscribe to the channel. At first, Mercedes had the cleanest possible explanation. Russell was unbeatable because the team finally got the car right. The setup worked. The tires stayed alive. The balance looked sharp. The upgrade delivered what the factory expected. And Russell drove with the calm confidence of a driver who knew the car underneath him was finally giving him something real. That is the version Mercedes would want everyone to believe. A legal upgrade. A perfect execution. A driver extracting everything. A team finally turning development into victory. But Formula 1 becomes dangerous when a car does not only look fast. It looks too complete. And that is why Red Bull would not treat Austria like a normal Mercedes win. Because a normal win has obvious reasons. A strong start. A good strategy. Clean air. A track that suits the car. A driver who manages the tires better than everyone else. But a win that looks too controlled creates a very different reaction. It makes rivals look at the data. And once rivals look at the data, the story changes. They stop asking who won. They start asking why the car behaved like that. Why was Russell so stable under braking? Why did the rear not move more on traction? Why did the tires survive so well? Why did the pace keep repeating? Why did the Mercedes look strong in the exact places Red Bull expected it to suffer? That is where the alleged illegal upgrade becomes the center of the storm. Because an upgrade is not supposed to make a car magical. It is supposed to improve something, while the car still pays a price somewhere else. More downforce usually brings more drag. More straight-line speed usually sacrifices corner grip. More aggressive rotation can hurt the rear tires. More race pace can create more degradation. That is the normal trade-off. The car gives something, and the car takes something back. So when Russell's Mercedes appeared to gain too much without showing the usual cost, Red Bull had every reason to ask what the upgrade was really doing. Was it improving airflow? Was it stabilizing the rear? Was it helping tire temperatures? Was it changing how the car behaved under load? Was it allowing Russell to attack without damaging the tires? Was it legal performance, or had Mercedes stepped beyond the line? That question is explosive because Formula 1 lives on the edge of the rulebook. Every top team pushes. Every top team searches. Every top team studies the regulations not only for what they ban, but for what they accidentally allow. That is how breakthroughs happen. But it is also how controversies begin. Because the same idea can look like genius from one garage, and look like cheating from another. Mercedes would call it development. Red Bull would call it suspicious. The FIA would call it a regulation question. And Russell's win would suddenly become something bigger than a race result. It would become evidence. That is the danger of the word illegal. It does not just attack the upgrade. It attacks the meaning of the victory. It asks whether Russell was unbeatable because he drove a perfect race, or because the car had an advantage it should not have had. And that is the kind of question Mercedes cannot allow to grow unanswered. Because once that doubt enters the paddock, it follows everything. Every future Mercedes lap. Every Russell stint. Every tire curve. Every straight line comparison. Every FIA inspection. Every Red Bull comment. The car stops being watched like a race winner, and starts being watched like a suspect. That is the pressure Mercedes would feel immediately. Not necessarily panic in public. The real panic is quieter. It happens in engineering rooms. In legal discussions. In data reviews. In the meetings where the team has to decide how to defend the upgrade, how to explain the performance, and how to keep the development program moving while the whole paddock stares at the same piece of data. Because if the FIA truly found an illegal upgrade, Mercedes would be in deep trouble. The win would be questioned. The part would be scrutinized. The team would have to explain how it reached the car. Rivals would demand consequences. And Russell's Austrian performance would be trapped inside a scandal he may not have created, but could not escape. That is the brutal reality of Formula 1. The driver wins with the machine. And if the machine becomes controversial, the driver's victory becomes controversial too. But there is another version of this story that may be even more uncomfortable for Red Bull. What if the upgrade was not illegal? What if the FIA looked closely, saw the alarming performance, reviewed the data, and Mercedes still survived the checks? Then the situation changes completely. Because then the upgrade does not disappear. The pace does not disappear. Russell's confidence does not disappear. And Red Bull loses the cleanest answer. They cannot say the car only won because of a banned part. They cannot expect the advantage to be removed. They cannot protest the speed away. They have to solve it. That is the nightmare version. Because a legal upgrade that makes Russell look unbeatable is much harder to fight than an illegal one. An illegal upgrade can be stopped. A legal upgrade becomes a weapon. And weapons in Formula One do not stay still. They are refined. They are understood better. They are built into the setup philosophy. They become the foundation for the next update. That is what Red Bull would fear most. Not Mercedes being caught. Mercedes being right. Because if Mercedes has found a legal performance direction that keeps Russell calm under braking, clean on traction, gentle on tires, and consistent across a stint, then Austria was not a lucky moment. It was a warning. A warning that the car may have entered a window where everything starts connecting. And when a Formula One car starts connecting, the performance becomes dangerous. A more stable platform helps braking. Better braking protects the front tires. A calmer rear helps the driver pick up throttle earlier. Earlier throttle improves corner exit. Cleaner exits reduce sliding. Less sliding keeps the rear tires cooler. Cooler tires preserve pace. Preserved pace creates strategy freedom. Strategy freedom gives the driver control. That is not one upgrade doing one simple job. That is a chain. And chains are what win races. Because when every part of the car helps the next part, the driver does not have to fight. He can manage. He can wait. He can attack at the right moment. He can defend without destroying the tires. He can repeat lap time while the rival is slowly running out of options. That is why Russell looked so dangerous in Austria. Not only because he had speed. Because he seemed to have usable speed. And usable speed is much more threatening than raw pace. Raw pace can be messy. Usable speed wins races. Usable speed lets the car stay alive through the stint. Usable speed gives the pit wall flexibility. Usable speed makes a driver look calm while everyone else looks urgent. That is why the upgrade question matters so much. If the upgrade gave Russell usable speed legally, Red Bull has a development problem. If it gave him usable speed illegally, Mercedes has a regulatory crisis. And if nobody can clearly explain it quickly, the paddock gets trapped in uncertainty. That uncertainty is powerful. It changes how the next race is watched. If Russell is fast again, the suspicion grows. If Mercedes is slower, people ask what changed. If the FIA checks the car again, the pressure increases. If Red Bull keeps asking questions, the story refuses to die. That is how a single Austrian win can become a season-long shadow. Mercedes knows that. They know the win is not enough anymore. They need the performance to be legitimate. They need the upgrade to survive scrutiny. They need Russell's race to be remembered as a breakthrough, not a controversy. And that is why they would scramble. Because in Formula One, perception can become almost as dangerous as the ruling itself. If people believe the car was illegal, Mercedes has to fight the story. If people believe the car was legal but suspicious, Mercedes still has to fight the doubt. And if people believe the car was legal and brilliant, then Red Bull has to fight the car. That is the triangle. Mercedes defending. Red Bull investigating. The FIA judging. And Russell sitting at the center of it, with the most important question attached to his win. Was he unbeatable because Mercedes crossed the line, or because Mercedes finally found the line better than everyone else? That is what makes this first block so important. Because the story does not begin with a penalty. It begins with behavior. The way the car looked. The way the tires held. The way the pace repeated. The way Red Bull reacted. The way the FIA was pulled into the conversation. And once those pieces connect, the entire paddock understands the stakes. If the upgrade was illegal, Mercedes could face one of the most damaging controversies of its season. But if the upgrade was legal, then the trouble may not belong to Mercedes at all. It may belong to everyone trying to catch them. Because a legal Mercedes upgrade that makes Russell look unbeatable is not a scandal. It is a threat. And threats like that do not disappear after one race. They travel. They evolve. They become confidence. They become momentum. They become the reason a team that looked beatable suddenly starts looking like the one everyone has to fear. The next layer is where Mercedes' problem becomes much bigger than the word upgrade. Because an upgrade is supposed to be visible in performance. That is the whole point. A team brings a new part, the car becomes faster, the driver feels more confidence, and the stopwatch begins to move. That is normal. But when an upgrade makes a car look stronger in too many areas at once, the entire paddock starts asking a different question. Not, did the upgrade work? But, how did it work this well? That is where the suspicion begins. Because Formula One upgrades usually come with compromise. A new aerodynamic part may give more corner grip, but it can add drag. A different setup direction may help tire life, but reduce qualifying sharpness. A more stable rear may improve traction, but change how the car rotates. A stronger race package may protect the stint, but cost performance somewhere else. There is always a trade-off. So if Russell's Mercedes looked calm under braking, clean on traction, gentle on tires, and repeatable through the race, Red Bull would immediately look for the missing cost. Where did Mercedes pay for the gain? If the answer was obvious, the story would be easier. But if the answer was not obvious, the upgrade becomes dangerous. Because a car that gains without showing the price starts to look like it has found something hidden. And hidden does not always mean illegal. Sometimes hidden means clever. Sometimes hidden means the rival has not understood the concept yet. Sometimes hidden means the data is showing a behavior that photographs cannot explain. But sometimes, hidden means the FIA needs to look much closer. That is why the governing body becomes central to this story. The FIA does not care whether Red Bull feels uncomfortable. It does not care whether Mercedes feels proud of its development. It does not care whether Russell looked unbeatable. It cares about the rules, the measurements, the legality of the upgrade, the way the car behaves under load, the way the part functions on track, not only in the garage. Because modern Formula One is not only about what a component looks like when the car is stationary. It is about what that component does at speed, under pressure, under aerodynamic load, when the tires are wearing, when the fuel is burning away, when the driver is attacking curbs, braking hard, and getting back on the throttle. That is where the real truth appears. And if an upgrade behaves differently on track than rivals expected, the FIA may have to decide whether that behavior is allowed. That is the tension. A part can pass one type of check and still create controversy. A concept can look legal in isolation and still raise questions when its effect appears in the data. A team can believe it has found innovation, while a rival believes the same part has crossed the line. That is why this second block matters so much. Because the question is no longer only whether Russell was unbeatable. The question is whether the upgrade created that dominance in a way Formula One can accept. If Mercedes simply found legal performance, then Red Bull has a problem. A very serious problem. Because legal performance is not removed. It is developed. It is protected. It is refined. It becomes the foundation for the next package. But if the upgrade was illegal, Mercedes has a different problem. A crisis of legality. A crisis of trust. A crisis over the meaning of Russell's Austrian win. That is the split that makes this story explosive. One path turns Mercedes into a scandal. The other turns Mercedes into a threat. And Red Bull would not be comfortable with either. Because if the FIA confirms illegality, the sport enters a political storm. What was the upgrade doing? How much performance did it create? How did it reach the car? Was it deliberate? Was it a mistake? Did it affect the win? Did it affect previous data? Could it appear again in another form? Those questions would surround Mercedes immediately. The team would have to defend its engineers, its processes, its interpretation of the rules, and Russell's result. That is a heavy burden. Because in Formula One, being fast is celebrated. Being fast through something illegal is devastating. It turns applause into suspicion. It turns performance into evidence. It turns a victory into a hearing. That is why Mercedes would scramble. Not necessarily in public. Publicly, teams speak carefully. They stay calm. They use precise language. They protect the brand. But behind the scenes, a controversy like this creates urgency. Data has to be reviewed. The part has to be defended. The FIA's interpretation has to be understood. The engineers have to explain the behavior. The team has to decide whether the upgrade can stay on the car, be modified, or must disappear. And every decision carries risk. Keep it, and rivals keep watching. Remove it, and people ask why. Change it, and people assume the original version was questionable. Lose pace, and the suspicion grows. Repeat the pace, and the pressure grows. That is the trap of a controversial upgrade. There is no quiet way out. But Red Bull has its own trap too. Because if Red Bull pushes hard and the upgrade is declared illegal, they win the argument. But if Red Bull pushes hard and the upgrade survives, Mercedes gains something powerful: legitimacy.